Koz Productions. Featuring Dmitry Bivol. Привет, this is Koz Productions Boxing. Today my friends we are looking at Dmitry Bivol. This is a fascinating boxer from Russia who is dominating everybody. Today we will look at two reasons. Dmitry Bivol is beating everybody so easily, with such class and high skill. Thank you for joining us.
Alright, so it's 10 degrees in here. I'm going to do this quick. Here's reason number one of two reasons. This one should be obvious to most people, but if you've never boxed before in the ring, you realize that this is actually not so easy if you try to stick with it. So it's just basically game plan and discipline. So not every boxer has discipline. Not every boxer has a backup game plan A or B. So to me, it's observant that his game plan is pretty consistent. I really don't think I've seen too much of a B or C game plan after plan A for him, because plan A usually works for him so well. But if you've watched Bivol fight, you'll see that his mentality never breaks, his confidence never breaks, his discipline. He has extreme discipline, and he never diverts from his game plan. Canelo tried to get under his skin in a couple times when Canelo's plan A or B wasn't working, and Dmitry Bivol never broke from his game plan. Just stiff jab, 1-2. The whole fight was dancing around him. Never broke confidence, never broke game plan, never diverted from the plan. So that is reason number one. And it's kind of hard when somebody tries to lure you to a gunfight and get into close range. Most people will kind of, want to show up for the fans and make a good fight, or just kind of lose their nerves and try to tough it out and see who's the bigger man and get into an unneeded exchange with the power puncher. And you'll see that Dmitry Bivol never gets lured in to do that. He never diverts from his game plan. So that's reason number one. And he's really good at that, almost better than anybody in the sport. He's got extreme discipline. Okay, here was number two. This is the one that everybody is waiting for. And it was really interesting watching this. I noticed that obviously Bivol, his fighting style is called Soviet pendulum style, or post-Soviet style. Now, guys like Lomachenko, Usyk, there's some other fighters like Alexander Rasputin. Bivol uses this technique. These are what the guys who grew up under the Soviet Union, this is how they were trained in fighting. And it's a foot technique that's different than Mexican, it's different than American, it's different than Cuban. And I think this is one of the primary reasons these guys are beating everybody so easily. But I noticed when I was watching Bivol, his style was unique in that Soviet pendulum, in that it wasn't like Lomachenko's or somebody like Yanabek or somebody else. His style is actually a slight adaptation to the Soviet pendulum. It still uses the pendulum, but he actually changed one thing that I didn't really notice, which was really interesting. And I wanted to show that to you guys. So if you've ever watched footage of guys training in the Soviet Union in the 1990s, they all follow the same way. They all train the same way with the pendulum step. But if you've ever seen Lomachenko and Usyk does the pendulum really well, and I feel like he actually uses the formal pendulum, the way they're taught in the amateurs more than anybody, which is essentially going back and forth on your feet like this, right? You'll see Usyk like this a lot. And essentially it's bouncing back and forth. And when they teach you from a young age to use the pendulum, you literally are not allowed to throw a punch. You literally step in front of a mirror, shadow boxing, and you literally jump back and forth on your feet to train your cardiovascular system, your lungs, because it's a really tough style to use for 12 rounds. You have to have the most extreme stamina in the sport, better than your opponent. So they teach them the pendulum step, literally from a young age, just going back and forth from the mirror. And then that, into the amateurs, turns into the pendulum going back and forth. But here's where it gets interesting. I noticed that Bivol, he uses an adaptation of the pendulum. He doesn't swing back and forth like Usyk. You'll notice he has a pendulum step, and he does a slight, 1-2 counter and steps back like that. But I noticed it was actually, this was the difference in his back foot and his front foot. His front foot is planted down like an American fighter. It's flat. You'll look at his front foot, it's flat. But his back foot is actually arched up on the balls of his feet. And if you carefully watch all of his fights, this is pretty much how he fights over half the fight. He'll step forward like this, and he'll do a slight pendulum. But it's not a very big movement like Usyk or Loma when he's coming in. He'll just he'll throw a 1-2 and step back like that. It's actually quite common to some of the American fighters like Shakur Stevenson or Tank Davis. I've seen Crawford use this. But it's an adapted style from the pendulum. So it's a movement of back and forth. But I noticed that Bivol, what he's doing is he's able to use both the pendulum and both his power, like sitting into his shots. So he's still on the balls of his feet. So he wants to sit on his punch. He's getting power by being stationary, but still using the pendulum at the same time. And he sits into his shot while, instead of his back foot being flat-footed like Americans fight like this, he's got an adaptation of both the pendulum and American. So when he wants to throw that really heavy shot, he can sit into it, but at the same time get out of danger with the pendulum. He just has to lift his front foot a little bit because his back foot is arched the whole time when he's fighting. He'll step forward like this. And it's funny how I never really noticed that because I know he's a Soviet pendulum-based fighter, but I was like, yeah, he doesn't move around as much as some other guys. So I thought that was interesting and wanted to share that with you guys because he is a really good fighter and he's beating very, very top elite fighters with ease. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Comment below and looking forward to his next fight. If you guys find anything unique about his style as well, welcome to present it below. And I wish you guys a happy holidays. Thank you.